It's very easy. So you just need to stand up, to turn around, and like talk to someone that you didn't know before. Because like we're very lucky today to have with us Iván Landabaso with us. So was born in Belgium. Thank you. All right. So had you been welcomed as a rock star before?
Only when I played the guitar very poorly at an event before. This was much better.
You didn't tell me about that.
I'd rather not.
Okay, so thanks a lot for joining us today and to offer your time. So before starting, like, let us know, like, is there something that you accomplished today that you feel particularly proud of?
We had a pretty good board at one of our companies, and I'm not proud. I'm proud for them. I think they had a very good year. I think that was pretty good. Then I do jiu-jitsu, so I did some pretty good takedowns on a couple of guys at the gym, and that was pretty cool.
Okay, so I will take it easy with the questions just in case. All right, so generally I guess that you like receive the pitches, but like, okay, who is Iván in 2 minutes maximum? Let us know a little bit of an overview for those who don't know about you. Like, who is Iván?
Okay, so I'm from Bilbao. I was born in Brussels because Bilbao people are born wherever they want. And I grew up in Belgium, moved to the UK for studying, started working in France as an economist at the OECD. I got really bored really quickly because I wanted to be on the ground, because I was advising some countries on how to build startup ecosystems, and I had never been or built or done anything around startups. So I felt a little bit like a imposter syndrome, no? Went back to university, started getting involved with some associations around technology, again in the UK. At the time, I knew some people in California, moved over there, got super lucky, landed in a startup that I don't know how I got so lucky that they let me work for them, really. And they gave me a weird visa that was a J1. It's a professional exchange that was just so happened, super serendipitous, because I had studied something that made sense. This was a B2B SaaS company. Spent a year in California, then moved back to the UK with them to help them grow. It's called Bloomreach. Luckily, it went well. Then I went to Facebook. At Facebook, I was there for almost 4 years, working on different product teams, particularly around augmented reality and mixed reality. What else? COVID hit. I really wanted to come back to Spain. Really, is the reality. Like I figured out throughout my 20s that I enjoy early stage stuff, right? So I had almost done like a 360, and I really wanted to come back here. And I had never lived in Spain. I've always looked at the ecosystem from afar, no? And I always met a lot of Spaniards abroad, and I always thought, man, these guys are super talented. I don't know why people don't come back. So I paid close attention to how the ecosystem was picking up. And so over the last few years, I've only been here for 3 years, but I started to see that there's some pretty interesting spillover effects from initial success stories, no? Which is how the wheel starts to spin when you have employee stock options starting to move the wheel, and all the people wanting to put back into the ecosystem and start companies. And I took basically somewhat of a career risk because I wanted to come here. So I'm over 2 minutes. I joined a venture capital fund. The way I got in, super happy to talk about this because I think it's one of the values, which is give first. No, it's like, I thought, how do you get into venture capital? I didn't know if I wanted to start a company or get into venture capital or do something else. I didn't know. And I always built side hustles. I don't know, founder is very generous. I'm more of a operator / side hustler turned VC that also has a business on the side. Anyway, came here, got really lucky. I started to build some simple databases for people like you. If there's how many founders in the room today? And how many people that want to start a company in the room today? Okay, so I thought, what does a founder want when they're starting in the early stage? Well, first thing they want to know is if they want to do venture capital, which is not always the case, because people think venture capital is the everything in the world, and it isn't. It's like 1%. It's not better or worse. It's just different. You can build super successful businesses that are not venture capital based. Anyway, I was thinking about venture capital, and it's because I thought it was interesting. Built a simple database. It got picked up on TechCrunch. I had a anonymous Twitter account. Started posting stuff that I thought was interesting for startup founders, and that got picked up by my now partner and friend Samuel, and he messaged me, and then here I am. Like, so for the past 3 years, I've been investing in a venture capital fund here in Spain called JME Ventures. It's a seed fund. We have 3 funds, 20, 40, 60 million, and we can talk about it later, but generally it's fund in Spain. And I'll stop, sorry, 4 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, no, thank you. I think that gives an overview. By the way, like taking into account the pitch, I think I would invest on Ivan.
Oh,
so
I'm not sure about it.
well, the pitch for me it was good. So okay, let's start a little bit like on the professional side, like entrepreneur part of yours, no? And like let's stop at the highlight of like you worked in Facebook. How is it working in Meta, Facebook at the time? What did you do there? Let us know a little bit about it.
Sure. So I joined in 2017 in the London office. So the London office is one of the few outside of the US that actually has product teams. Like most of the time, like in Spain, you would see like it's mostly commercial offices and so on. So I got really lucky, and really I've never had a job applying through proper interview channels. Like I've always been rejected. Like I remember out of university, I applied to all of the traditional. I didn't know startups was a thing. I got rejected by everyone. Like it was 2011, post-crisis. So all the jobs I've gone, I've never been through the traditional process, and this just happened to be again this type of situation. So at university, I met a guy, one of my good friends from Harvard, who ended up at Facebook, and he knew the team, and he said, "Man, you gotta apply to this because this is a good match." And they introduced me, and it helped a lot. Okay, yeah, Facebook does some pretty hardcore interviews, but I got really lucky again. Like, so yeah, joined. I think at the time the office was around 1,000 people or so. At Facebook, we were less than 10,000 people, and I just picked up the curve of like hyper hiring that has cost the company a little bit afterwards. No, like that has gone through some layoffs lately. But yeah, it was super interesting. What was cool is I landed on a team that was basically an experimental team at Facebook, right? My role was something called, it's super weird. It's like a total maverick role. It's called product specialist within product operations. And my mandate was basically figuring out how to pick up signal from our users, right? Bug reports, engagement, like Facebook groups on what they were doing, like some stuff that we did. I built a group, a community where we were positioning our product, and we wanted early adopters to come in, and on the back we would scrape their comments about what they were talking about, different features, what they liked or they didn't like, put that on a database, overlaid a sentiment analysis algorithm at the time, figure out what features were resonating, which weren't, what bugs needed to be fixed, what bugs needed to deprioritize, and so on, and then we pushed them to the product team. So it's a weird role because I did a bunch of stuff. I built a community. I helped with some infrastructure stuff so that there weren't so many crashes. I was supporting first 1, then 3, then 4 teams. And basically at Facebook, once you basically, at least in my case, as I said, it was a special, not special unit, but it wasn't the core business. This was Facebook Reality Labs. Once you earn the trust of the team, they sort of give you, okay, how are you going to help us? No, I had to come in and I had to propose, okay, so I think that we could move the needle on this KR by building this thing for which I need these resources and I need to convince these people. So the first 6 months was sweating. But once you get to, once you understand a little bit how things move around, it was very interesting. It was very interesting because you got to work on, I don't know, we worked on the community, this community of Spark AR community is called, of augmented reality creators that came from graphics design, porting them over to augmented reality effects. And I worked on the integration on the Instagram camera. So like I was working with the guys that were pushing effects to, I don't know, hundreds of millions of people overnight, no? And it was pretty cool to work on a product that touches like so many, like the stakes are pretty high, you know. It was funny, like sometimes stuff broke and we had an internal system. I'm only talking about public stuff, by the way. So that's when something breaks, there's a sev, something else sev, and then everything like just, and it's amazing to see such a big team, no, and growing team all working together to solve problems so quickly. Anyway, super long answer. Really cool experience, really good company, and really good leadership, despite what the media you might read and so on and so forth. I think they have extremely talented people. They know how to build products. They know how to build a culture. And honestly, the leadership to me was outstanding. What you might think from some or others, but the guys, at least in my organization, and even Mark, no, I really loved working there, and they treated me so well.
Okay, and now asking one of the buzzword questions. One of the main things of Reality Labs is augmented reality, extended reality. Is the metaverse dead? Is it gonna come back with the Ray-Ban deal, or what do you think?
First, I think the metaverse is misunderstood. So people think about the metaverse as a place, right? Like you have multiple metaverses. Okay, I don't think that's what the mission statement is, and not why the company changed the name and so on. I'm not speaking for Facebook. Please don't kill me, legal teams. This is just a personal opinion. I think, and I don't know who I heard this definition from. I think it was the guys from My First Million, but they talk about, and I agree, and Mark agreed, which was cool to see, but the metaverse is a moment in time. It's not a place. It's when people start spending a significant portion of their waking hours engaging in front or within a digital environment, which already happens. Like if you guys pull out your phones, you're probably spending, I'm gonna be cautious here, like 3 hours, 4 hours. Most of you probably spend more than 5 hours on your phones, right? So it's a moment in time towards a convergence, right? And yeah, so I don't think it's dead. I think it's very much all going, if anything, too much in that direction, personally. And we probably should like calm down with the screen time. And I think that's also part of the mission of the company. And again, not speaking for them, but it's about providing the tools for humanity to work together, to live together, to build community as part of the mission statement. And instead of being addicted to a screen, if you can meaningfully connect, which are the metrics that Facebook looks around, okay? You can agree, disagree, there's externalities to this, but that's the mission, is meaningfully connect with people.
So would you invest now in metaverse projects?
I never give investing advice.
I had to try.
I would not bet against Mark Zuckerberg.
Okay. All right. That's a good point. All right. So let's talk, like you've done, like when we talked the other day, like you told me that you've done like many little ventures along the way. So, but there's one, no, around 2015, you founded Urbi, an e-commerce. Like, let us know a little bit about what was Urbi, how did you set it up, why?
Yeah, maybe just to take a step back. Like, so again, I think some people here, for those who want to be entrepreneurs, my learning, if it's of any use, is you gotta throw loads of stuff at the wall to figure out what goes and what doesn't. And most people get stuck in analysis paralysis, right? Like you just think, oh no, the perfect idea. No, just throw stuff at the wall. So what I've been trying to do, and with moderate success or no success at all, depending on how you judge it, has been throwing stuff at the wall. So I built a consulting company to get people into, not a company, a project, because we never incorporated, to get people into top universities in the UK. We built an app with some friends. It's called TriviTap. You won't find it in the App Store anymore, but it was like a gaming thing with riddles and so on. We built Urbi with my cousin, which has 99% of the merit here because he was in Spain and I was in California at the time. Which was an early e-commerce provider of electric mobility devices to sound fancy, but really were just hoverboards that everyone was falling with, right? So the hoverboards, the electric motorcycles, and the electric scooters, right? So he went to China, found some good providers, added a little bit, very light design, and then we started selling them, and it got to modest 6 figures. and then we got destroyed by the margins because this type of product, when MediaMarkt comes to the market, they just absolutely destroy you on price. And anyway, it was a great learning because it was the first time I incorporated a company. Made, you have the revenues that you have, but you pick up a lot of the stuff that you don't want to do. At least that's been my conductive layer throughout my early 20s.
And so, is there like, what is one or two things that you especially remember about, like, that's something I won't do again, based on that your experience?
So at the time, I thought, oh, man, it's so expensive to start a company in Spain. But it's not insurmountable at all. I know a lot of people get down into the bureaucracy and so on. It's there, but you can definitely build great businesses even in Spain, even with the hurdles that you have to get through. So it's important to have a positive outlook in there, even if there are hurdles, as there is in any country. Stuff that I didn't like. I don't know. It was kind of fun all around. I love my cousin. Like, I picked up more what I loved than what I didn't like. I learned more about what I didn't like in my full-time job. And that's like having a boss. I didn't like that at all. I don't know, multiple things, but yeah.
Okay, so who's your boss at JME? No.
Our GP is Samuel, but he's a great guy. It's fun to work with.
Okay. All right. So after Urbi, you did like a few more projects, and now you mentioned that you created a community, Revenue Squared. When did you start that, and why?
Yeah, so when I was at Facebook, I met a guy randomly because we were trying to do the same thing. It was a Spanish guy who was leading sales organization at Facebook, like part of Workplace, right? Like at the time, he was a sales guy at Workplace, which is basically an internal tool that Facebook used to sell like Slack, okay, an internal communication tool. And we're both trying to start a jiu-jitsu club at Facebook. And so we sort of hacked our way around the system and started a jiu-jitsu club. Then we started a boxing club. Then we started a Muay Thai club. Then we had classes all week, every week, with like a nice budget, right? And so with him, we've always been trying to throw stuff at the wall. And we built an app for jiu-jitsu together. We were trying some stuff with an e-commerce. And then finally, when he moved back to Spain, he's the head of EMEA at Canva, which is a pretty nice business if you know about it. And we wanted to build something together. And we've always, like, I worked in sales. My first role before working at Facebook was as an SDR. So I know the pains of being an SDR, and I really admire the role, and I really admire the sales function. I love product, but I also like sales. I'm a bit of a weirdo. I like a bit of everything. And I saw that that Americans are really good at building community. Look at Startup Grind. But in Spain, we're pretty bad. Like, we're really good at having community and those human development indicators. But then when it comes to work, we don't have that. And so we saw a couple of models in the US that were working really well. And so we said, okay, so let's do an MVP. Let's start a dinner and invite really good salespeople in Spain. So luckily we have access to some pretty nice and smart people, country managers, VPs of sales in the Spanish environment or ecosystem. So we put one together, it filled up immediately, we did another, and then we started a Slack, and then we incorporated, and basically today, we opened it in January or so, but we had a wait list. We haven't marketed it at all, it's all been word of mouth. And we opened it to the public, and today we're like 400 members. It's a subscription, so you pay 30 euros a month and to be part of the community and get 3 things. It access to a Slack where everybody's answering questions, much like you did today, like help me with. So everybody's super open to, I'll make you an intro to hire the first UK guy you need, or how do I hire my first AE for a B2B SaaS company in this region. All of the things that you encounter in day to day, and we only get people that want to help. No? So that's one. Second, we do AMAs online. So we bring in, I don't know, we've brought the CEO of Clary, like Silicon Valley billion-dollar company. We bring in Aaron Ross from Predictable Revenue. So all of the stars in the go-to-market sphere, we bring them because Jorge locally is like well-known there. And so we bring them, and basically I gave them access to do an AMA, which to me is like, if you're into sales and you can ask a question to Aaron Ross, it's pretty cool. And then thirdly, we do this kind of stuff. Once a quarter, we do an event and we do executive dinners where executives come together, like 8 of them, and it's sort of moderated and they discuss problems like in their day-to-day, which is pretty magical to see like senior people talk about in confidentiality, right, their day-to-day problems. And yeah, anyway, that's the company that we're building on the side as a side hustle. But yeah.
Okay, and where do you host this event? So if someone wants to join, how should they do?
Yeah, so you just type revenue squared on Google and you submit your application for review.
Okay.
And we host them in Madrid and Barcelona. Yeah.
All right. So, and what are your plans with Revenue Squared? When are you gonna raise funds? What's next?
No, so it's a bootstrap company, and we don't wanna, like, the community itself. It's not never gonna be a huge business. I think like that's not the intent. The intent is to add value to people who are part of it, right? To have as much condensed quality there that people derive loads of value from and that they love it. That's what we're most obsessed about. Where there is a business model is the top of the funnel. So like it's really like a play. If you think about it as a funnel, it's a media company that at the bottom has a highly curated membership community for sales leaders that want to help each other, not just any salespeople. Like we used to interview everyone. Now we have an automation, but we review every single application. And the business model, really, if this ever becomes something, which TBD, startups, you crash, you burn, you die, and then you revive many times, sometimes. It's a media company. So taking the knowledge and understanding and insights of sales leaders in the Spanish-speaking world, whose mission is to elevate the sales profession, because I didn't talk about that, but that's where the insight comes from. Salespeople in the Spanish-speaking world, when you look at them, when you talk about them, when you hear about them, you think about a car salesman, right? Most of the time. Whereas we think, I spent time in the US, we think it's one of the most underrated professions there is. Like the selling part is like a small percentage of what you do. Like it's the best sales guys that I know move the needle in the companies that I've been in. There's some of them, if that's what you're after, most best compensated people that you find. Some of the most strategic and intelligent people that I know and I've worked with. And I think that in Spain that doesn't happen, right? Like people think, when I came out of university, I didn't know that I could work in a startup. Like I thought it was management consulting, investment banking, and sexy job X, Y, and Z, And to me, when I discovered that sales was a thing, and when I got the first job, I was like, oof, this is like, my mind exploded. So that's what we want to bring. We want to elevate the profile of salespeople in the Spanish-speaking world, because Americans and Anglo-Saxons do this very well, but in Spain, we're starting to see more and more, but it's what we're trying to do. And that's where the media part of the company makes sense, because we take the learnings from the private curated community, and then we share them in newsletter, LinkedIn, so on and so forth. That's how you can build a business out of it, but TBD.
Yeah, and actually you got me thinking, no, because it's true that generally, or I personally tend to like do like the salesy. People know he's like very salesy, not something negative, when it's actually like a very important skill to have. So I agree that there's like a long way to go in Spain in that matter. And you have another fun project, right? Another little one, like Startup Riders. Like, what is it about, and when do you find the time to do that?
Yeah, so Startup Riders was actually the hack. So remember I told you I never found a job through a traditional thing. Like it was I tried to think about problems. I hate this word, but people used it a lot at Facebook, and it makes sense, orthogonally. So like, how can you actually get what you want to do using leverage that is not obvious? So the way to get into venture for me was like, how do I actually add value to an ecosystem I have zero presence in? So I started a Twitter account. I obsessed about the topic. How do you build this audience? All the typical hacks. And I started the newsletter at the same time. And the idea was add value first, however you can. There's many ways to add value. Just think about the problems that you have as a founder or wannabe founder. Pick one and use distribution or any other form of leverage that you can find at the time. But today, it's you have capital, you have people. Both of them are permissioned, so someone has to give them to you. And then you have media and code. Code, you need to know how to program. Media is free. This is the framework from Naval Ravikant, which you should listen to that podcast. Very good. So I built a newsletter, just started publishing stuff that I thought was interesting from learning through my humble short career. And yeah, so it's a humble publication. It has like 7,000 subscribers, mostly investors and founders in Spain. And I publish basically things I find interesting or useful for founders, insights from people I admire, and financing rounds, from locally. And that has opened me so many doors. Like that, the fact of sharing curated ideas, I don't even know if they're good, but okay, people seem to sign up. So I don't know. Just invites luck your way. Right? You basically you make things happen through you instead of you chasing things. And in my day to day, and we can talk about it if you find it interesting, but I work, my job is basically a sales job. Like I need to find deals. I need to hunt down deals. I need to win deals. I need to keep deals, and hopefully they'll make money one day. But this acts also as a deal magnet, right? And I'll stop there. Basically, it's a new Substack publication that I write once or twice a month. Okay, that's the short.
All right, thank you. So you started publishing about relevant topics for founders. That includes investment. So before like getting into JME, had you invested before, like somehow or not?
The 2015 e-commerce business, I put in the money, but that's it. I had never invested in a startup before.
All right. So and let's get into your role as a partner at JME Ventures. So tell us a little bit, what is JME, like their philosophy? How do you help founders? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so maybe I'll tell you the story of the fund and then like how we help, which I think a lot of funds tend to overestimate, right? So the fund starts in 2012. There's 3 funds. It started by José Manuel Entrecanales, who is a CEO of Acciona. So he wanted to help Spanish entrepreneurship, which is one of the reasons I said, okay, yeah. In terms of mission statements, I like this fund, like versus others that, everybody that has their reasons, it just resonated with me. Like the whole idea of Spanish ecosystem for startups is underrated, and I think there's potential here, and I want to do something about it. And I think he did something very good for the ecosystem, and he started these things. It started in 2009 as an association, and then spun off as an independent venture capital fund in 2012. And so that's the story. First fund, 20 million, 16 investments, 2 unicorns, which is insane. I wasn't there. Flywire and Job and Talent. 2016, 40 million with a few very good companies there. Geniali, Lingo Kids, Odilo, Ironhack, Erious Risk. Some very good companies today in the ecosystem, locally. And 2020, 60 million, and that's where we're gonna stay. So we're not gonna raise bigger funds because we do one thing and one thing well, we think, and it's focus in the Spanish ecosystem at seed. Yeah.
And what's that focus like? So that if who is the right founder to go to JME?
It's very hard to tell. When I get that question, so we are sector agnostic. We think we invest mostly in the way I define it, and then this might be a different answer depending on who you talk to at JME, but mostly we have the same mindset, is talent and liquidity quality. So talent is hard to put your finger on, also hard to determine if you're doing any good, because VC has 10-year cycles, and anyone that tells you otherwise is, in my opinion, lying. So I don't know if I'm going to be a good investor until 10 years from now, and you can throw tomatoes at me in 10 years for anything I said today. And then the liquidity quality is a technical term that's not really technical. It's really just at seed, at the stage that we invest in, we invest after the earliest round. So like there's pre-seed, typically business angels, family, friends, and so on. They build a little product and it has a little bit of traction, right? At seed. And seed, what we call liquidity quality is how which isn't even our term. Like I just stole it from other funds in the US that I think do things well. Is how bright does the fire burn, right? Like you have some engagement metrics, you have some product metrics, you can talk to some customers, you can try to determine if this is a very bright light that just needs to blow some fuel on it, like to burn in other places, or if there's no fire there, or the flame is too tame, right? That's the easiest analogy I can think of. But basically, we spend a lot of time trying to analyze the quality of the founder, how they think, if they have an original insight, if they start talking about the world in a different way that you would assume. Or that's when I get mostly excited, is when I hear a totally different perspective of how the world works, right? Plus the product metrics. It's very hard to describe because, again, it's very hard to prove. You have 10-year cycles, but the way this business model works, and I go back to my earlier statement, VC is 1% of how to make great businesses. It just happens to be disproportionately in terms of impact. For instance, in the US, since 1974, venture capital is responsible for something like 40+% of all IPOs. It's responsible for venture-backed companies, responsible for 85% of R&D spending. It's responsible for 25 million new jobs created, like most of the new jobs created. So it's a subsegment of the economy that's so crazy that it produces an enormous amount of value to society, in my opinion. But in terms of creating businesses, they're phenomenal business. Most phenomenal businesses are not venture-backed. Anyway, if you want to be good at venture, at least on paper, you need to be right and non-consensus. And non-consensus typically sounds crazy, right? So like, I don't know, there's multiple examples. Facebook was crazy. These guys didn't have a business model. It was in one college, then two, then three, but the flame was very bright because the engagement was crazy. And the moment it hit a campus, it exploded and people were using it everywhere, right? So that's what I mean by liquidity equality. It's as much a science as an art, and I am no one to talk about it because I've only done it for 3 years and I have a lot to prove, you know. But that's how we think about it.
Okay. And in general, what is the best way to approach VC, would you say? Like,
so again, like going back to the fancy word that doesn't mean anything, but orthogonal, like how can you get into their field of vision, adding some value, or know through someone that has given you a good word? Like typically the best deals don't come inbound. They come as a referral, right? Like they don't come through the website. We do review all of those. And again, like I'm so sorry if there's anyone in the room that we haven't gotten back to or anything, because it's just the volume. We see like 2,000 decks a year or something like that. So, and we are wrong so many times, right? It's just you have to prioritize somehow. And so typically you establish a set of filters around you, right? So trying to think partner specific. So like, what does this guy or girl look into? What is interesting to them? Like, is there a way that my company has something to? So like being more personalized, the same way you would do in sales, right? Like you tailor your message to the person, the ICP. You know, who's the ICP for my particular company? That's one way to do it. And the second is, how do I add value first? And who do I know that can make a warm intro is the most obvious one as well.
okay. And so what resonates with you if someone wants to approach?
I mean, it's so hard. I don't know how to answer that. A warm intro sometimes, but yeah, I don't know how to answer that. It's hard.
Okay, so there's a lot of like a hunch thing, no? As you were mentioning, like the connection, and sometimes it's a little bit random.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and like you were talking a little bit about like partner specific and getting a little bit into how a fund works. How does it work? So is it like you have an allocated amount to invest, which is totally up to you? Is it like shared? Tell us a little bit how it works.
So this changes from venture capital firm to another. And think about a venture capital firm really is just a service provider almost that sells a commodity, right? So there's just as many good venture capital funds are bad ones as there are companies. They're very good companies. They're very bad companies. There's a lot of average companies. So same thing happens in venture capital. Um, our venture capital fund, we work very collaboratively. So we share all the deals. Like, we're a very small team. Like, the investment team is 6 people, and so we share everything. Sometimes you bring in a deal, you give it to someone because you know they like it, or and so on and so forth. Or someone sits on the board, but they want to introduce whoever. And we're very low ego in a way. Um, at least that's what I think. And what was the other part of the question?
So
And how does it work?
yeah.
Yeah. So out of the 60 million, depends on the fund strategy. Our fund strategy is 50% initial investments, 50% follow-ons, right? So we have an initial investment period, first 4 or 5 years, and then you have you can allocate follow-ons all throughout the life of the fund. Which, by the way, remember I talk about venture capital being like 8-10 years, sometimes more, as cycles. It's a very long time as an asset class. So today, as an example, no, so we are in year 4 of the fund 3. So we will be deploying the last first tickets until December, and then we are raising also a 4th fund, which will start investing in January onwards. But that's pretty much it, and we all can propose anything, right? Like, everybody can bring, okay, I want to invest this ticket in this company for this reason, and that's a little bit the magic of how you that goes into the process, the investment process, which is more complicated, and I won't bore you with, if you unless you want to know about it. But
So and like, given the context that the valuations have gone down, so that what has changed for you, like from last year, early 2022 to this year? What do you do different, if anything?
we honestly not that much. Like, we've tried to find good companies to invest at seed, which I think are typically less affected by macro, right? And also by the price inflation that's been suffering over the past 4 years, luckily. Um, so not that much. It just so happens that the first half of this year, there was so much anxiety in the market, because you know the graph of like buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell. Animal spirits, right? Like, market goes up and down, you get pressure from the public markets and so on. But I think there's been a lot of anxiety on the entrepreneur side, as much as in the investor side, because a lot of good companies haven't gone out to market. They've been waiting for the market to warm up, and so it's been a bit dead the first half of the year.
So if you were a founder yourself, or for a founder that is like at seed stage, like, would you say that it's like bad, or how bad the moment it is for them for going fundraising? Is it as negative as it's generally perceived, that scarcity of funds, or that there's not such a big amount of funding?
I think seed is reactivating. That's my sense, but nobody knows. There's no crystal ball. Maybe macro changes tomorrow and we're in a recession. I don't know. It's very hard. But I think seed is a little bit more sheltered. Series A, still a bit dry. At the same time, there's a lot of funds that were raised over the past 3 years, and I have the sensation that there's way more liquidity than actual founders in this ecosystem right now.
Okay. And so if at what point, as a founder, no, it seems, or generally the message that is shared is like, you need to go fundraise, do VC. So what are the signs, or what kind of signs can a founder check or look at to know that it's actually the moment that they do need funding? So are there like some metrics or some things that you think that as a founder say, okay, no, better wait, it's not like bootstrap some more, regardless context, Is there like some things that you could think of?
I think that it really depends, case by case. I would emphasize, particularly talking about people in this ecosystem, that VC is not the only door, not even close. So you know, like, many times I speak with companies that want to raise a venture round, and I think, but you have such a great business. Why? Like, it doesn't make sense for you to raise venture capital. Like, just because it's probably like a different ceiling of a business, but it's a wonderful business. You can make a phenomenal business out of this without raising venture capital. Like, why would you do this to yourself? not that it's bad, it's just a different type of trajectory, right? Like one is a J curve, so you're dying, and then you're expected to, with a bit of luck, go upwards. And the other one is just like steady up and right, and it's wonderful, and you can have amazing exits, and you don't need it. So it's really on a case by case, right? Even software plays. People think that I'm building software, so I have to raise venture capital. No, no, you can make an amazing lifestyle business or an enormous business without any venture capital investment.
I couldn't agree more. No, like being aware of like those alternatives to venture capital, and like now venture debt is a thing there, like non-dilutive funding options. Is JME like looking into any of that, like opening? Not
No, in that way we are very focused. We're purest venture capital seed Spain.
okay. So now before like opening the floor for questions from the audience, let me share a very few quick questions. The idea is that you try to respond as quick as possible. So I don't know, one very random thing that you've been pitched about, like something that says like what? No names. Well, if you wanna share.
We go page. I feel bad because I don't want to talk.
Okay. So
Yeah.
instead of that, is there like one pitch that you let go, but and that you now think, oh, that one,
Yeah,
yeah, and
many
do you
times.
like again without names, like any idea that you can are able to share?
So venture capitalists are wrong all the time, like so wrong. You wouldn't imagine. Like your portfolio is 30 companies, and then if the power law works out, then people think you're a genius, and really just you're not. Yeah, like there is an enormous amount of luck involved in this, and you need to do the work. But it's a necessary condition. But you also need to be very lucky. My personal opinion. Companies every day, not every day, but like every year, there's been like one or two that I'm like, oh my god, that's a phenomenal business, and we missed it. You know, it happens. But at the end of the day, you luckily also, like, because you put in the time, and if you have a sound strategy, and you put in the hours, and because it's not, people also have an impression. I've been on both sides, right? Like, so I listen to all the criticisms of VC, and I'm like, it's interesting, like, this is super, like, there's a lot of hate sometimes for a VC job. I'm like, a lot of this feedback is correct, but depends on who you work with. Same thing, there's very bad businesses in venture capital, there's very good ones. And so you have to do the work, and the work invites luck your way, and so far so good.
Okay. And okay, Buzz question number 2. I'm not gonna ask about investing on AI, but do you use generative AI tools yourself, and how, if so?
Yeah, I use ChatGPT every day.
What for specifically?
Translate this in layman's terms. I put in contracts and tell me what specific clause I should be paying attention to. Give me benchmarks for X, Y, and Z. Help me write an investment thesis summary for this 15 pages I've written that make no sense. Give me the 10 competitors from this company between 2014 and 2018. It's endless. I use it every day.
Okay. And
Also, yeah, I also like silly pictures, like now the new integration with DALI and so on for posts. I like to experiment with this stuff as well. So yeah.
okay, so playing a little bit too. And like you've done many little ventures, so do you mind sharing one failure and your learning from it, if like from one of them?
Yeah, so during COVID, I was very bored, and I launched a bunch of stuff. One of them was a surfboard marketplace in Spain. So I love surfing, and I thought whenever I go somewhere, I always have to pay the surfboard fee, and I hate it. I have to rent it, and it's annoying to carry it with the plane, and they break, and it's a disaster. And I saw there was a guy doing something similar in the US. So I found a way, like a no-code platform that would do it for me, and I went full on. I went on Wallapop, and I spammed like 200 people a day with like, "Hey, you should." Everybody was selling their surfboard. I would go in and put it in the marketplace, and I got a couple of buys, a couple of rents. But yeah, it's impossible to start a marketplace alone, doing everything on your own. when you have two other jobs and you're trying to get a job in venture capital was my learning. Yeah.
Yeah, loan particularly is pretty hard to do.
And also it's
anything.
probably a shitty business. So let's be honest. Yeah.
All right, now we're gonna open for questions. If you have questions, like raise your hand. And Nayara, can you pass the microphone, please? We have a question. Thank you. Over here.
So you were talking before about like the criteria of how to know which founders to invest in or not. And do you think full time not being full time is a red flag?
Yeah. If you want to raise venture capital at seed, for sure. If you're trying to do it at seed, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. But at the same time, a lot of the time, you don't need to raise anything to test a model, which is something I run into all the time. Like I have friends, I'm starting this thing, I want to raise some money to. Okay, have you tried pre-selling? You wanna build like an e-commerce, a D2C company that sells gummies with creatine, right? Oh yeah, I'm gonna buy this thing and I'm gonna make a branding and a website. No. Try to find 50 people that are gonna pay you before you start building anything. You send them a PayPal link and you say, okay, like, do you want to be one of the first guys? And I'll give you a discount and I'm building this. Can you get some initial liquidity quality traction with this? And then you start spending money to attack that demand. No, but sometimes you can't do that, particularly if you're building something that what venture capital should really be for. It's just that's another topic that we can get into, which is like transformational technology, right? Like not necessarily deep tech, but the type of stuff that moves the needle at a human level, right? But for most of the stuff that we're thinking about in Spain or in other ecosystems at the moment, which doesn't mean we shouldn't be investing in those things. We do. We've invested in a rocket company, which the other day was the first private company that launched a rocket into space. It was a test, but it worked, so on and so forth. We do invest in those things. But for the type of stuff that I think you're referring to, which is most of the stuff, you can generally get a sense of what the demand's going to be by pre-selling or testing the market. Not doing research. A lot of people tell me, yeah, well, I've talked to 50 people. That's not good enough. You know, when someone pays you. The community that I built, the test was, are people willing to pay me to be part of this community? And then we said, okay, now we incorporate, but not before.
What do you think is missing in the Spanish startup ecosystem, like to really become a leader, like a global leader?
We can get into the weeds here, but trying to be constructive. Like, if you want to think about a simple framework, or at least the way I think about it is education, regulatory, financial, right? So financial, I think we're sorted. My opinion. A lot of people say, no, but there's a funding gap. Yeah, I mean, there's other types of investment vehicles that would make sense to the type of technologies that we were talking about earlier, which require longer cycles, right? Sometimes a rocket company needs 20 years to put something in the air, or you need more time to develop a particular type of vaccine, right? A 10-year cycle as an asset class doesn't work for that, typically. Okay, so, but for me, the funding gap, we're mostly sorted. The problem is, in my opinion, on the finance side, that people confuse venture capital and funding with entrepreneurial drive. You can build a company without funding, or at the beginning, you might raise funding, but it doesn't need to be venture capital, right? At the regulatory side, I'm not even going to get started because I want to be constructive and positive, and you can build things despite all the regulatory issues that we have, particularly around, if I were to choose one aspect, is the employee stock options pool, which is, to me, the biggest lever of creating an ecosystem, because that's how any network effect happens in any of the biggest technology polls that we know in the world. And I don't know why we just don't copy that model. Instead of talking about phantom shares and doing weird things with fiscal, I won't even get into it, right? And it's fine, it still works. We have those success stories here. You can do it despite of, but that needs to change constructively. And I would love it if there were like people from government that we can, like people in the ecosystem can talk to and like, hey man, let me show you a P&L and what it means, you know, to to charge this amount for this stage, for this type of company, for someone. If you want most people, which means the locals, people who work here to start a company, you need to understand what it costs them, right? And paying a gestoria $150 plus a startup cost of all of the things that you have to pay as autonomo, and which is fine to you maybe who has a job, but someone who's making average income here maybe can't pay that every month and start a company. And I don't think they get that, because I think they have good intentions, but they haven't seen a P&L. It's my honest opinion. But yeah, those are the three things. I would put a lot of emphasis on the regulatory side. I think it's going in the right direction, but I would put the accelerator there, because you don't need to invent the wheel, just do what works.
Are there more questions?
Yep. Is there any main trait or set of traits that you look for in founders?
That's a hard one. Beard, yes, beard, glasses, internship, software, yes. I don't know. It's hard, because talent is one of those things that you think you know it when you see it, and then you're wrong a lot of the times, and that so it's very hard. It's very hard. I've written about this, but they're not even my original thoughts. I'm still trying to put my finger on what my opinion is on this.
Hi everyone. First, I'm paying for the community, so I'm taking great value from this. So just so that you know.
Awesome, thank you.
And actually, I was thinking about it's for me at least. It's very obvious that you're very mission driven in the way that you see the market here. You want to impact the Spain and the founders and everyone. And if you close your eyes, maybe think on some couple of years ahead, like what would be like the image, or how would you see or dream of this market, that how it would be?
So I would love it. Like if I had a magic wand, right? If I had a magic wand, I would have employee stock option pools work, because that's what's gonna make success stories. People reinvesting that capital into the ecosystem, and in 2 years you have time to have some of the big successes that are coming down the pipeline now, and those people starting companies. That's number one. And number two, I would love it if universities weren't so traumatized with like letting innovation out of their gates, right? Because the tech transfer here doesn't really happen as far as I'm concerned, or I don't see it happen. I think it could happen much more. And there's success stories like Oxford University, Cambridge, also Stanford. There's other playbooks that you can use, right, to open those doors. I'm not an expert on the matter, but I would love it if you can open up all that talent that's locked up in universities, and people who are in applied artificial intelligence research, going for a PhD. I would love to talk to that guy. I was like, why are you not, like, why is the university also not pushing you towards trying to start a commercial project, right, out of this, and making it easier for you? That's on the second pillar. And on the finance pillar, you asked for a magic wand, so I'm asking for a lot. I would love it if there was a new asset class that LPs were asking for investing in truly disruptive 20, 30-year horizon opportunities that don't happen, because there is really a funding gap. I think there's talent. I think there's also a cultural thing that is changing rapidly, is my hope, of people seeing that there are other doors, and entrepreneurship is the most underrated thing, I think, if you're willing to also swallow the pill, which is you need to be open to the pain, because you fail all the time. Most of the time you fail. But most people who have the talent to do it, I believe in Spain, are locked up and don't even know it exists. So I would love to, if I could do like this, like all of the, because I think it's also an intrinsic trait of a person. Some people are made to build stuff and to create companies. You're sort of born with it, but a lot of people don't know that that's an option. And if I could do like this, I think we will multiply the amount of talent that starts companies instantly. So that's my magic wand.
Okay, next question.
What do you think is, or what kind of particularly special thing do you see in the Spanish ecosystem in comparison to other European hubs? And do you think it has the potential to become even the #1 place to be in Europe?
So I think the country is insanely attractive in terms of culture, community, everything that we all know here. Like I've lived in many places: Belgium, France, UK, California, East Coast, blah blah blah. There's nowhere like Spain, in my opinion. I'm Spanish, but I've lived there. This is an incredible place to live. Like you have incredible national beauty, like history, food. You have everything. Barcelona, Madrid, it's unbelievable. That's #1. I think you can make Madrid and Barcelona absolute talent magnets for the rest of Europe and the States, right? What's different? I think we have right now. It's partly bad, partly good. There's an enormous arbitrage in terms of costs. Like labor cost here is much lower, and so companies come here and their margins are different. The technical talent here is phenomenal, and it's super underrated. And we're starting to see funds from the north of Europe starting to see that also. Yeah, I'd say those are the three big things that, you know, in Barcelona you can ski, surf, start a company. In Madrid you can do the same. You can, I don't know. I'm a big fan. I think most of my American friends, when they come see me, they agree. They just look at some of our hurdles and think makes no sense and that we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
Okay, thank you, Ivan. I think we need to wrap it up, but afterwards in the networking, like there's time for you to ask. Let me wrap this up with final questions. How can the startup grind community help you? What can we do for you?
Just keep preaching the good word, you know. Like if you know people who can open their eyes and start companies, and you can rob them from McKinsey, or you can pull them out of a university research hole, just tell them, man, why don't you just try it out? Like there is this whole world that's completely different, that is right in front of you and that you don't see. So that's one thing I think you could do for me, because it impacts all of us.
Like, so still of the workers from McKinsey. I will write it down.
You know,
I was just kidding. Thanks a lot, Iván. Let's give it up for Iván for sharing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming, for joining us over here now. We'll have a drink all together and continue the conversation right here.